Good afternoon and welcome back. Few reminders before we start this session. Please remember to silence all your devices. Please use the Submit app to share your feedback with us after the session today so that you can redeem a free AWS branded swag. All AWS sessions you see today are being recorded and available after the session via content devices on exit. Now, please welcome to the stage Eve Menegard from AWS, who will present on Want to Accelerate Migration, Educate Everyone. Eve, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're there. They've gone? Oh, yeah, I've heard that. Especially with Vibun gone, the direction has changed, right?
Have you ever considered that when it comes to your cloud migration, success will not only depend on technical skills and the technology itself, but also on a cloud understanding, or rather an understanding of cloud across your entire organization, not just amongst technical people. In this session, I'm going to share with you a few insights that we've gleaned from some of our customers who've gone on just this very journey of training everybody in their organization as opposed to just technical individuals. In fact, I'll have a number of customer stories to share throughout the session, so let's get started. You know, it's interesting. A leading group of chief executives recently said it best when they said that when it comes to the cloud, you know, success doesn't depend on the technology, but on the people and the processes that must change and adapt. And I like this because actually, if you swap that word cloud for any other major technology trend, past, present, and future, it holds true. It's not about the technology. If you think about, be it IoT or mobile, you know, being perhaps slightly past technologies like mobile, it's the same. It's actually not about the technology, but about the people and processes that must adapt. And it's interesting because when I speak to my customers, most agree that they're moving some, if not all, of their workloads to the cloud. Most also agree that they have a significant skills gap. If I ask them, most agree that, yes, they're probably not just ready yet. But the riskiest situation is if I ask what they're planning to do about it, and if this is what we hear. Just a silence, a resounding silence. Because that silence, in other words, if there is no plan, there is going to be a cost associated to that silence. And I want to tell you a little bit about what that cost might look like in practical terms. The very first way that this cost might express itself is cloud perception challenges. So we're not yet even talking about the technology or technical skills here. We're talking about some of your stakeholders in your departments or organization. Your stakeholders actually will have an influence on your architecture. And they're all operating with best intentions, and they're all following best practices. But these best practices actually need a bit of an update when it comes to the cloud. And I want to give you a few examples. If you think about the HR team that's supporting you, you know, they're so important because they're deciding who to invest in, how to invest in staff, what are the traits and qualities that your organization seeks when you hire people, what investments do you make when it comes to developing your people. And so if they don't have a good appreciation of what the cloud is and what it means to work with the cloud, that's going to affect you. It's actually going to affect the quality of what you can produce from a technical perspective. I want to talk a little bit about risk as well. I think it's so important. Personally, as a citizen and as a consumer, I'm so happy that most organizations take my data really seriously, right? But again, if people haven't had the opportunity to educate themselves about the cloud, one of the risks you have, in fact, is counterintuitive. That risk is that risk professionals may actually prefer legacy and riskier infrastructures to modern cloud-based infrastructure. So again, there is reasons there to talk to them about key concepts like the shared security model, our high level of accreditations from a security perspective as well. And I'll talk a little bit about finance as well. And is anyone from finance, by the way? Finance teams? Okay, probably best that way. I'm kidding. I don't mean to pick on finance at all, but one of the things that they're really good at is capitalization. Now, I don't mean sending emails in all caps. No. I think we're all good at that when we have to be. I mean the art and science of reporting and managing assets optimally over years, right? In a world of cloud, that skill set is no longer that relevant. It's still relevant, absolutely, but new skills are required, right? Around cloud economics, for example, or how to calculate total cost of ownership in the cloud. These become new skills that these audiences need to think about. And the same applies also for people in strategy, for example. If they don't understand what it means for the types of services that you're going to offer and the way you're going to develop these services, it's going to affect you. And it's going to affect you in more ways than just this. Fundamentally, it's going to slow you down. This is an actual chart from a customer of ours who early on in their journey said, we are moving all in on the AWS cloud. And then unfortunately for about 11 months, this happened, right, which is little. And this is a challenging position to be in because you can imagine that the people who led this endeavor would have made promises to their stakeholders around cost efficiencies, around innovation. And of course, that's not a good curve. So customers look at new ways to approach these challenges around skills and capabilities. And we find that customers build their training plans, their skills development plans, on 3 key pillars. Now, the first one is digital training. Digital training is an excellent way to ramp up everybody easily and rapidly and at a very low cost online at their own pace. And it helps you achieve a common baseline. I spoke earlier about cloud fluency. It's that ability to ensure that everyone speaks the same language. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's one way to achieve that. It's the scale option. And then beyond that scale option, it's really helpful to think about the subset of people in your organization who are really going to be at the front line with the cloud. This is ideal for technical profiles, but actually also key decision makers who will actually need to know how to make decisions with regards to cloud. There's going to be great classes and options for them there as well. And this is excellent because it's an opportunity to be in a room with a subject matter expert, a qualified trainer, but not only that, to actually interact with like-minded peers as well and learn from them, because everyone does have a diverse experience. And finally, customers really appreciate the ability to qualify that the learning outcomes they're trying to achieve are being hit with a certification program. It's interesting because what's really valuable in the certifications is not the certifications themselves for the organizations. It's mostly the process of certifying. The process of certifying has challenges. It is a challenging certification, and it means that it's actually a great opportunity to develop your staff, to develop yourselves also. And we'll talk again about what a specific certification journey might look like. Now, this may sound like a lot, and it is. So customers don't try to do all of it at once, of course. We take a blended learning view here. And I have customers across Australia and New Zealand. I'm based in Australia. And I have customers who follow this very approach. So for example, Australia Post is one of my customers. And one of the things that they're doing is the foundation phase. In fact, they've been doing that for a long time. This is the phase where you try to achieve that cloud fluency. And it's also unique in that this is the only phase that caters for both technical and non-technical people. This is where we're trying to have a common set of knowledge so that when you have a project involving all your stakeholders, and you're speaking about things like data sovereignty or shared security model, everyone actually knows what those things mean in a world of cloud. Beyond phase 1, technical profiles go on to phase 2, which is more about the core professions of our industry and really enabling those professionals, the IT professionals only from here on, to execute their roles effectively in the cloud. So we're looking mainly at architects, system operators, and developers. And we're trying to enable each of them to do their role effectively. So they have a common base, but then they go on to their own paths as well. And then beyond this, of course, we have the professional and specialty phase. And this is where you might take your experts, your leads, and your subject matter experts. Perhaps some of you work in security or big data. There's going to be courses and training and certifications relevant for you in that phase as well. So where do you start? Well, this is, I think, an excellent starting point. The Cloud Practitioner course is available both online and I believe it's been released very recently in person as well. It's a great option because it's not too technical and it allows you to get that common knowledge, that cloud fluency across the organization. Now, everyone is different, and in a given organization you might have very technical people as well as more business decision makers. So we have 2 pivots you can take here. One is the Business Essentials course, which is ideal for people who don't actually want to know about the ins and outs of the platform. They just want to have a baseline, and then they really want to focus on the core benefits from a cost perspective, for example, as well as security and compliance. This course will do that very effectively. On the other hand, if you are a technical profile, then really the right option for you is Technical Essentials. That one is a one-day investment, and I have to say some of our trainers, it's their favorite course because you really go from not necessarily knowing anything at all to understanding and actually having practiced key AWS concepts like launching an EC2 instance in the cloud, creating an auto-scaling group, creating security groups. So these are really key principles, key aspects of the cloud, and you get to experience those in that course. So again, it's important to reiterate here, if you're not technical, you'd typically be doing Cloud Practitioner or Business Essentials if you really want to stay away from the tech. Now, all of these can actually aspire to pursue the Cloud Practitioner certification with a bit more additional self-study. And it's important to reiterate this. They all help you achieve a common base, but with different levels on each topics, right? Because everyone is different. So for example, they all cover aspects relating to compliance and security. But the difference might be that in the technical course, you actually get to do literally the things that make your setup secure, whereas the other one will just talk about the concepts. They all help the individual understand what is going to be their role in an environment that uses the cloud. They will understand their responsibilities better, and they will be able to collaborate better with their peers as a result as well. And finally, they all talk about the cost aspect of things. But as you might expect, it'll be more of a focus in the Business Essentials course as well as the Cloud Practitioner course. So that's the beauty of it, is everyone must have a common base, but there are learning paths for everyone. And if you're an architect or a developer, and we have many other learning paths, this is only a subset, there is going to be a learning path for you. In fact, we have a number of certifications that cater to the majority of the disciplines we have in our industry. And again, you might be a networking professional, you might be a machine learning professional, and there is going to be a path for you that's relevant. Notice, though, the common base. The starting point is Cloud Practitioner, which, again, is an ideal certification for anyone who works with cloud. If you're technical, you can actually, and I would say you should, aspire to the other certifications as well. So let's dive deep into one of these learning paths. If we look at a developer, They will have that common starting point. It might be technical essentials, as I recommended earlier on, or it might be cloud practitioner. But from that common base, they then go to their own path, which would be the starting point would be the Developing on AWS course. It's a 3-day course where you learn how to integrate natively with the AWS SDKs and APIs to achieve the common goals that a developer would want to achieve with AWS, right? How to build securely, cost-effectively, in a manner that is scalable, and so on. So notice that these objectives are actually not too different to those of an architect or a system operator. They're going to have the same concerns. How do I achieve those key goals? But how they do it is different. So a developer is focused on the SDKs and APIs, whereas a system operator would be focused more on automation and monitoring. And an architect is really more about how do I integrate these key values into my designs, and how do I ensure that when I'm reviewing designs, I have those priorities in mind. And here again, you can see this concept that with a bit more additional self-study, you can go on and take the exam. So the exam readiness workshop is something that we can do in person, usually at a cost, or it's available online for free at aws.training as well. What's really interesting here is that the learning doesn't stop just at that associate level. And again, we don't focus on just cloud training. We really help you embark on some of these other very, very important trends in our industry, such as Agile DevOps or AI/ML. So in this case, for example, a developer at the professional level will go on to the DevOps path. And it follows a similar structure. I won't go through all of it, but it follows a similar structure. And what's interesting is their SysOps peers would have gone from associate SysOps to the same DevOps path. That's actually quite unique in that at the professional level, you actually want those paths to merge back into a common knowledge, but a very deep one at this time. So look, we've talked a lot about the classroom training, but it really isn't only about that. I really encourage you to think big with skills development and to think about all the other things that you could be doing. It's not just in the classroom that people learn. I'm sure you've experienced this yourselves. I really encourage you to think big with your partners. Most of you will probably work with partners. I used to be in a partner function myself, so I'm fond of what partners can do for customers. And very often, they influence the solutions that you have in place a lot. So it follows that in your engagements with your partners, I really recommend that you try to make sure that you have solid knowledge transfer as part of those exchanges as well. AWS events like today, I'm hopeful you'll agree, are useful in developing more knowledge, and we have technical sessions on other floors as well. Other things you want to think about, professional services will have a number of engagements that will really help develop these muscles. And I have to say, our professional services, we're really not focused on executing migrations, for example. We're really set on enabling our customers with the skills they need to do it themselves in the long term. So those engagements are quite good. And in fact, very often those engagements actually combine AWS training as well, or it's highly recommended. Finally, strategy and advisory bodies. They see a lot of customers. These might be government bodies or third parties. They see a lot of customers go through journeys perhaps similar to yours. And so they'll have insights that would be valuable to yourselves as well. And finally, I think it's so important in any learning journey to include experiential days. I had this on an earlier slide. This is things like hackathons and game days or immersion days. These are great opportunities to go a little bit further than the training and actually put it to practice. So I'll give you an example. If you're going to do a game day, which is a day where we actually kind of test out what you know, it's so much more useful to do it after you've gone through training, because then you're not just testing what you know, you're testing what you've learned, and you're having a fun day, hopefully. So that's a really good experience to leverage as part of a skills development program. So we've talked about a number of concepts here, and I think it's important to just consider what we're talking about. At the base level, we're talking about developing technical skills, right? You actually have to uplift some of that technical capability. You most certainly have excellent tech talent in your organizations. They know your systems very well and your culture. All we're doing really is uplifting technical capability in the first instance. Then in the second instance, what's also critical is we've talked about cloud fluency. We're enabling your stakeholders, again, your partners, be it risk or HR or finance, people who actually do influence your ability to execute your functions. We're enabling them to have better conversations with you. And I'll tell you one thing. My customer, another customer of ours over in Australia, IAG, is an insurance business, a major insurance business. They actually see that their projects are going many-fold faster, not because of the technology, not even because of the technical skills, but because the conversations around these projects are going so much faster. And so it's on this solid dual base that I see customers being able to truly affect their culture, their way of working, and therefore the services that they're able to offer customers. So again, if I take IAG as an example, some of the things they're working on as an insurance business, they have to handle claims when there are disasters. And you might know Australia has its fair share of disasters. In Australia, what they're trying to do now, as an example, is they want to be able to be predictive and proactively call customers that they think might have been affected by a disaster. So think about that. Put yourself in the shoes of a customer who's just had perhaps their property burnt down, and think about, instead of having to do all the work yourself, having your insurance company call you and say, hey, we think something's happened, can we be of help? That's the transformation opportunity here. It's a game changer. And I think our customers are really seeing this. And again, you can do that most effectively if you have a solid base, and that's both technical but also cultural. And I think as part of this transformation, one of the other benefits that I see our customers achieve is around organizational strength. So for me, this means two things. One is, at an individual level, we see that the people who go through these programs, who go through the effort of a classroom, sometimes preparing for the classroom, then going to the class, then doing a bit of self-study and doing some of these other activities we talked about, and then actually taking an exam, well, that's quite a journey. And so we see those individuals actually report being more effective in doing their jobs and execute on strategy that you might have set. We also see that these individuals are far more likely to stay with their employers. And in fact, I have customers who talk about the investments they make in people to help attract candidates as well and talent to their organizations. So this is nice, but is it nice enough? All of this has to yield a tangible, practical result. It's a lot of investment and effort. And I have to confess, the story I shared with you with the customer who wasn't progressing much wasn't complete. That customer did eventually create a comprehensive skills development program. And as a result of that, you can see that they were actually able to massively accelerate the pace of their migration to the cloud. And finally, they were actually able to deliver on their promises to their stakeholders, be it around cost efficiencies or, in their case, innovative projects as well. So we're coming to a close here, and I think it's helpful to think about some of the other customers as well that we've got who are working with us. Australia Post, I briefly mentioned earlier, are embarked on a skills development program with us as well, and they're actually talking about moving their core systems. It's a logistics business, so they're thinking about how do they rebuild from scratch their event management system. So this is a system that, manages billions of events, not millions, billions. And the question there becomes, well, how do we do this effectively? They predict that because of things like e-commerce, the demands on those systems will triple in the coming years, and the current way it's built is a challenge. So they're looking to cloud and native cloud to solve that. And they're doing it by making sure that their people are enabled for success on that journey. So look, we've actually come to a close a bit early, which means that you get to go to the cocktail party early. But if I was to summarize a little bit, I think this is the biggest thing that I've seen change over the years that I've been with Amazon. Customers are going beyond a few experts. It used to be so common for customers to say, I'll just train a few experts. But what we see now is customers saying, we will train everybody at a high level on the AWS cloud. We'll make sure that everyone speaks the same language so that we actually collaborate better, so that we actually achieve these outcomes much faster, and we're able to reduce our costs, make the most of the benefits of cloud, and actually work on those bolder projects that we committed we would with our stakeholders. I hope you've learned something. I hope that you're better enabled to create your own training plan, be it for yourselves or for your organizations and peers. In terms of concrete next steps, I really encourage you to go and explore aws.training. It's our portal for both free online training as well as access to our schedule of public classes, be they provided by our excellent training partners or ourselves. And if you want to connect with anyone at Amazon with regards to building an actual plan for yourself, for your organization, please do contact my colleague, Melissa Wee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yves. Please remember to submit your feedback on this session in the app to redeem a free AWS branded swag. If you're interested in having a copy of the slides, please tap your badge on the content devices at the exit. There will now be a cocktail reception at the Partners and Solutions Expo just outside this room. Thank you everyone for coming to the 2019 AWS Public Sector Summit, ASEAN, Singapore.